If Al-Qaeda's Somali franchise, Al-Shabaab, had seemed like it was on the run over the past few months, this past weekend has shown the world a willingness and a ruthlessness to take its fight beyond its borders. Kenyan officials say the brazen attack by Somali militants on a Nairobi mall has killed 62 men, women and children, ordinary people just out shopping. The terrifying ordeal began Saturday. Some shoppers hid for hours, others were taken hostage. Smoke was seen rising above the mall for a number of hours as security forces stepped up their efforts to end the siege. They say they're now in control of the four-story complex, and it's one of Kenya's most popular shopping malls. Over 200 people have now been rescued. Many have needed medical treatment. And this matter is so serious that, as an extraordinary measure, Kenya's Vice President, William Ruto, has been allowed to return temporarily to Kenya from his trial in The Hague to help deal with the crisis. Of course, both he and President Kenyatta are facing charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court. That relates to the violence following the 2007 election. Kenyan authorities say they have arrested 10 suspects, including 4 at Nairobi International Airport. This is the most audacious attack by Al-Shabaab since it killed 60 people in the Ugandan capital Kampala in 2010. That was on the night of the World Cup final. And joining us live now from outside the Westgate Mall in Kenya is Nima Elbagir. Nima, thank you for being there. Tell me, what is the very latest?
Well, the Kenyan authorities, Christian, are saying that they believe we're now in the end game. They say that they've managed to release most of the hostages. They won't give exact figures for how many hostages still remain, but they say most of the hostages they believe are now safely out. They've also begun, as evidence of how much of the building they now have under their control, they have begun within the last 24 hours to ferry out the bodies that had been remaining in there while the siege had been ongoing. 10 civilian bodies have been brought out in the last few hours. They say that the hostage takers are cornered, that they have them within a limited space within the building. But the problem remains, Christian, how do you extract the remaining hostages when you're dealing with people who are more than willing to die? In fact, welcome dying to make the bigger point and the bigger cause, Christian.
Well, let me ask you, because you have been in touch with various officials and spokespeople from Al-Shabaab, and you have actually covered them, as we know, for so long. What are they saying about why? What is their aim?
Well, their avowed aim, the aim that they are speaking about publicly, is that they want to discourage the Kenyan public from supporting the Kenyan government in its continued presence in Somalia, where the Kenyan Defense Forces are part of that African Union force, helping to prop up the, we could call it still quite shaky, Somali government there. And they've been very successful. When Kenya went in, that really was when the tide turned against Al-Shabaab. They were pushed out of the urban centers. They were pushed into quite a small territorial footprint in south-central Somalia, given that this was a militant group that had a port, it had access to most of the coastline, it had the largest territorial footprint of any Al-Qaeda franchise. That's what they're saying this is about. But really, the sense we're getting that this is as much about a resurgent Al-Shabaab. For the last year or so, Al-Shabaab has been disunified. There's been a lot of infighting. They've been very, very weak. But in the last weeks and months, we've been getting a sense that they've been coming together, that they're re-energizing, that there are new money trails that are finding their way into Al-Shabaab hands. And you can see with an operation of this complexity, it would have been unthinkable a year ago, 2, or even 3 years ago to imagine that something like Al-Shabaab could pull off something of this audacity, something that involves bringing people in across borders, involves coming in broad daylight. This standoff now, Christian, has been going on for longer than the Mumbai terror attack. And when we spoke to the State House spokesman, he said, yeah, we freed 200 hostages, but given the number of people that were inside that shopping mall, we actually consider that there were 1,000-odd hostages inside Al-Shabaab hands. And that message is definitely hitting home. People are sitting up and taking notice in intelligence networks across the world, Christian.
Nima, you say it's a resurgent al-Shabaab. Others are saying, well, it's a desperate al-Shabaab sort of lashing out in some kind of a bid for further relevance. Do you know what are the nationalities? There's been a lot of speculation about were these all Somali nationals? Were there Somali, European and American Somalis or Kenyans involved? Do you know the nationalities of the attackers?
Well, al-Shabaab have claimed that there are Americans in there, that there's a Brit, a Canadian, and a Finn. This is, of course, the claim by a militant group that has been very adept at playing the propaganda game. But now we've been hearing from the Kenyan authorities that there are multiple nationalities in there. They said that they believe that this has been an organized global terrorism threat that they've been fighting. We've also been hearing from the U.S. State Department that they are growing increasingly confident that there are American citizens inside among those hostage takers. So it's really al-Shabaab playing to its major strength, which even in its weakest days has always been its ability to reach out to recruit young men in Europe, in the U.S., often from the Somali diaspora, but their most famous jihadi leader, who was believed to be killed within the last week or so, was actually an American with Syrian parentage. So this is a militant Islamist group that has been able to get its voice heard in the most unlikely of corners in Europe and the West, Christian.
Nima Elbagir, thank you so much indeed for joining us.